It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today, I have Anthony Brent. He's the co-president of the Neighbors of the Mayo Peninsula, and Bill Kraus. He's also a board member of the Neighbors of the Mayo Peninsula. The Neighbors of the Mayo Peninsula, who wants to take that question? What are we?
We are I don't want to say advocacy group that tries to work with the county to improve the quality of life on the Mayo Peninsula.
We do have a global audience. Can you explain where the Mayo Peninsula is?
Sure. If you take Central Avenue past the high school going out east toward the bay, you will hit Muddy Creek Road. And Muddy Creek is about the beginning of the peninsula. And it extends from there all the way to the bay. And it covers probably about 9 to 11 communities.
Okay. And that's past South River High School in Edgewater. So you have Mayo, you have Edgewater, you have
Selby by the bay, you have Cape Shores, Lock Haven, Sounders Point, Beverly Beach, about 8,300 residents all told.
And this is considered South Anne Arundel County, or for those that live in Anne Arundel County, just South County or even SoCo.
Yep,
that's right.
Many of the communities on the Mayo Peninsula started off as nice little quiet vacation communities.
Yep.
It is no longer that. Anthony?
No, not at all. It's expanded quite a bit, and I think currently our population is probably over a little like 9,000 just on the Mayo Peninsula alone. So that's where a lot of our problems really are emanating from, is that population, as well as any incoming population that comes onto the peninsula.
And we'll get to those problems because that's why you're here. You're not here to sell the beauty of it. But there is beauty of it. And back to that, the reason why it did start off as vacation community. You are on a peninsula. You are surrounded by water.
Yep. For years, the Beverly Beach area was a very popular summer resort for folks to come out to. Back in the 60s, that changed, and the land was purchased during one of the governorships for green space and conservation. Some of the areas were purchased with the express intent on leaving them as open space, that they weren't going to be developed into an active use park. They were going to be left for natural preservation. That's kind of changed under the current administration, and there's a push not only to increase the use and amount of the parks that are on the peninsula, but also the moratorium is being lifted, which is going to increase general development.
Okay, let's talk about the moratorium. The moratorium was on development because you did not have the sewage capability with your current sewage treatment plant, correct?
Still don't. The population isn't on sewers. We're on individual septic. And so while the sewers are now, the sewage is now being pumped under the river into Annapolis, the practical reality remains that the vast majority of the homeowners are on wells and they have septic systems. So when you lose power after about 2 days, all the alarms start going off because your toilets are backing up.
Right.
That's correct. So it's considered a gray water system. So all the solids stay with us in our septic systems while the liquids are pumped across the bay.
And why do you think the county decided that once they do this, they could open development back up, if that is the case?
And that was capacity. That was their one and only goal, was being able to get that capacity. The system that they put in was a cheaper system to put in than actually running sewage through the entire peninsula, which they would have had to do. So they had this system in place, so they connected up all the liquids to it and are pumping it out.
Okay.
So now that they have that capacity, they can actually remove the moratorium and allow for development now.
For those that aren't familiar with this issue of sewage, of public water versus city water, of septics versus public sewer, to get on city water or to get off of septic systems, correct, it takes an inordinate amount of money, not by the community as a whole and not by the county paying for it, by the homeowner paying for it. And a lot of this is based on the length of a driveway. So those with really long driveways,
sure,
it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's correct.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's correct.
And that's one of the reasons why there hasn't been a push to do it, is that there really hasn't been the volume of population to make it worth doing. But now you've got a situation where they're talking about 600 and something lots being buildable. And when you add that in, you're not only talking about people tapping into the septic system, you're talking about people drilling into the aquifer. And one of the questions we've raised that the county has not yet answered is how many people tapping into the rivers cause the rivers to go dry? And you could end up with a situation of large sections of the peninsula suddenly being out of water.
And what aquifer is this? Is Magathie also? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And we've got, we have several aquifers in that area. Some of the higher ones have high levels of arsenic, which causes you to drill lower. Well, of course, that means you're drilling through aquifers into others. And the end result is that, like I said, we just don't know what the tip point is. At what point is that one house going to suddenly cost 30, 40, 100 homeowners their water out of nowhere?
And you said you reached out to the county for an answer to this question. When was that?
Oh, a year ago?
Yep.
Over a year ago?
In emails or?
Oh, in emails and verbally. And right now, the county and state are actually doing a water study on the capacity of the Magathie and aquifers to figure out not only what's in there, but how much it can potentially, the capacity it can support. And so that's actually one of those questions that's still up in the air until that report is done, which that was one of the things we asked them to do was maintain the moratorium in place until after that water study and a subsequent also traffic study were completed before allowing for
And they haven't agreed to that.
They already lifted the moratorium.
Yeah, and this has been the concern that we had, which really is what resulted in this organization getting started, was that all of these individual pieces of the county, whether it was park development or the development that was being approved with the moratorium, was being done kind of piecemeal without any real coordinated plan. And the concern of being, what's the effect of all of these things individually and cumulatively? And the county never really seems to collectively know.
Correct.
Right.
All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, more about what's happening on the Mayo Peninsula and the concerns of the communities that are there. This is Donna Cole, 1430 Connection. We will be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today is Bill Kraus. He's a board member of the Neighbors of the Mayo Peninsula, and Anthony Brent. He's co-president of the Neighbors of the Mayo Peninsula. We're talking about the issues plaguing the Mayo Peninsula. Even though it is a beautiful place to live, there is one road in, one road out. There is a moratorium on development that has now been lifted because the sewage is going underneath the South River to Annapolis. Just the liquid, not the solid, that is still going into the ground. So there are concerns there. And also do not have any fire station on the peninsula or any. So if there is an accident on that one road in, one road out, and there have been plenty, what happens?
Well, it's really interesting. We had been talking with the chief down at Woodland Beach. They are actually the third busiest fire station in the county. And the peninsula is not only one road in, one road out, but because we don't have sewers, on either side of the road is a ditch to allow water drainage. That means when a fire truck has got to come down the road, there's nowhere for anybody to go to get out of its way. Right. And the chief is concerned that the department cannot meet the national standards for response times to some of the farther ends of the peninsulas. And that becomes a big issue when you've got a place like Camp Letts, which is a large children's camp on the bay at the end of the peninsula. If you have a drowning incident or something there, seconds matter, and that's a concern to us. Similarly, the county executive is proposing changing the parking out at Beverly Triton Beach. There's a field there. He wants to repave part of that and move part of it in line. Right.
Okay.
Well, the reason why that's an issue is because it's the only open spot on the peninsula where shock trauma can land. And twice in the last year, that's exactly what they've done. If they can't land there, they've got to go out to South River High School to land. And if you're bringing a helicopter in, seconds matter. And it's that kind of ground level knowledge that we are trying to get the county to engage with us on. And they just seem to, they'll hire an expert. The expert will do a plan based on plats and maps and computer data, but they don't talk to the people that live the day-to-day life on the peninsula. And that's really what we're trying to get the county to see, is that you can balance development and preservation and quality of life, but you have to see the realities on the ground.
Speaking of which, I sent out 2 emails. I called to the county executive's office asking for a person to come in on this interview, and I did not receive any response. So I gave them a chance to be part of this conversation. So we have a problem with getting in and out, moving over for the first responders. In addition to, in the county, there is already what some have said is a severe shortage of first responders.
Oh, very much so. So while we are here actually talking about Mayo Peninsula, we need to make sure that your listeners really understand that it's a multifaceted issue. And in this case, anything that affects traffic, water, sewer, the supporting infrastructure, when it comes to county policies on building development, the peninsulas in this county, there are 5, feel it first, be it positive or negative, the effects of those policies. And right now, again, while we're concentrating on Mayo, we are trying to work with the other peninsula groups in this county.
Yeah, I've heard that.
As well as other county organizations as well, because it doesn't just affect the peninsulas, but county at large. We're just the first ones to feel it first.
Yeah, and you have a very vocal group.
Yes.
Through Facebook, anyway, that I've seen.
Yes.
And I do get educated through it, so I'm glad that you do have this group. The other peninsulas are, Anthony?
Broadneck, Mountain View,
Arnold, Cape St. Clair.
Cape St. Clair, and then you have the
Annapolis
group
Neck.
on Annapolis Neck.
And that you have, Bill, you had originally said when we were setting up this interview, you were looking to begin a coordinated effort with these other peninsulas in order to be, and by the way, it's an election year.
Well, we had the initial meeting with the peninsulas, and it was kind of like deja vu. Everybody was reciting the same concerns, the same difficulties, and the same response from the county. And I think that it was that frustration that sometimes you'd contact the county and not get a response. Other times you'd contact different county offices, and they didn't know what each other had been doing. And the reality of, wait a minute, we're about to try to plot the next 20 years of development in this county, and not all the pieces are aware of what the other pieces are doing. We really have to start getting people educated. Our group is totally apolitical. We don't support or nominate or endorse any candidate. What we are trying to do is ask them the questions that affect life in the county, in the peninsulas, and then get that information out to the public and get the public energized. And we've been very successful at that, getting people to come to county council meetings, to email the council, to write to the newspapers. And, 2.5 years ago...
Radio stations.
Yeah, 2.5 years ago, there was no discussion at all. 2.5 years later, all of these organizations are engaged, and I'm sitting here talking to you on the radio.
Right. We're going forward into the next 20 years of development. That means we're in the midst of the general development plan. And there's been a series of GDP listening sessions already. The most recent one that did happen was at Annapolis High School on January 11th. The next one will be January 29th at Northeast High School, and then February 8th at Southern High School. You both attended the one at Annapolis High School?
I did.
Okay, Anthony, you attended it. We're going to take another short break, but when we come back, what these GDP listening sessions are all about and why they're so important. Correct. This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We will be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today is Anthony Brent. He's the co-president of the Neighbors of the Mayo Peninsula, along with Bill Kraus, a board member of the Neighbors of the Mayo Peninsula. The GDP, it's the roadmap for the future in the county. Anthony, you went to the most recent listening session at Annapolis High School.
That's correct.
Did you voice your concerns?
Yes, I did. I spoke specifically with Phil Hager, who's the new planning.
Right. We've had him in on the planning and zoning.
Great guy.
Yeah.
He's actually been very helpful to us. He's actually answered a lot of questions. Very user friendly. So we're really enjoying that relationship. The GDP is, as you said, the roadmap to how the county should be developed over the next X number of years.
Right.
Right now, some of our concerns with that is that it really has no teeth because it's just a guidance piece. So although they will be able to get all of this information, sometimes Phil's hands are tied when it comes to implementing some of that. And that's actually, if you listen to some of the developers as well, you'll hear some of their concerns. And their bigger concerns are mixed use properties and how the GDP is implemented, being that the county will have areas that are focused for growth, and yet because of the current laws and rules and in place,
They can't do anything
they
about
can't do anything about it.
i.e.
So
the-
it forces development into
Right.
other areas where it's not as desired.
We're seeing that up in the Magathie right now.
That's exactly correct.
And also you have the fact that, again, because it's a guide, any individual can come forward with a request for a variance, can go to the council, request a change, and the end result is, University of Maryland notes that Anne Arundel County approves 89% of the critical area variances.
So you're suggesting legislation needs to be enacted in order to make the GDP as effective as it possibly could be?
Because if you look at the GDP we're currently under, everything the residents in the small area plans wrote that they were concerned about has come to pass, but none of the positives they were looking for ever got implemented.
Right.
So the old GDP was based off what Bill said was a small area plan, where individuals from areas of the county got together in conjunction with the county to create the small area plan, which says in this geographic area, this is what we envision and seeing, and for positive and negative, and this is what we would like. That information all goes into the GDP, which is then used as that guide map. In this case, you're looking at Phil's department is, since the time the last one was done to now, his department is greatly diminished, and so he doesn't have the resources or manpower to actually create those small area plans. So it's our organizations we're doing our own. It's called Envision Mayo, and we're putting that together. Councilman Smith has also expressed an interest in doing that up in his area as well. So all of the peninsulas have actually talked about doing similar things so that we can give that information to Phil and his folks during the implementation of this GDP.
Because their hands are tied and because some of this is going against where it should be going for environmental reasons, have you considered legal action?
We have. Unfortunately, that's very expensive, but to be honest, we would rather try to work with the system as it is now. Somewhat of a fight, but at the same time, it's like the tiller on the Titanic, right? You don't want to make these major course adjustments, which happens with legal action, but if you can make the small little corrections earlier through the legal, through the process, having the adequate public facilities ordinances changed and modified, getting some of the rules that Phil has to work with modified so it allows them to focus the growth in the areas that the county really desires it to be in and the people desire it to be in. That's the real big plus that we're really pushing for. And so working with the councilman, working with Phil's organization, working with Parks and Rec, that is how we feel that we're going to have a better, longer-term effect than actually going through the legal action.
What I don't want to have happen is people listening to this show thinking that when they drive onto the Mayo Peninsula, they're seeing one McDonald's and Burger King and Target after another. That is not the way it looks.
No, it's very much a rural and residential community. And that's part of the concern is that, how do you balance development, which you have to have. You've got to have continued development, not only for the county's revenue base, but also just for the vibrancy of the community. But how do you balance that with other legitimate interests of people who already live there, the preservation of the environment that's out there? We went into this not from the idea of slugging it out with the county, but of trying to create a collaborative force that synergistically takes the strengths of county government and the knowledge and desire and love of the community and creates what could really be a model plan for Maryland and other states in how to make that balance work between quality of life and vibrant community development.
And on that note, I thank you both for joining me today. For those that want to learn more about the neighbors of the Mayo Peninsula, you have a Facebook page or a website. Yep. Anthony?
It's just Neighbors of the Mayo Peninsula. You look for us on Facebook. You'll find all the links of all the information, and even our email address is on there as well.
Right.
And we encourage people from other communities that want to come to Envision Mayo and see how the process works, see the kinds of things we've learned. Please come out and share what you have with us and let us share what we've learned with you and take it back, and hopefully your communities can become energized in this process.
Bill, Anthony, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having us.
This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We will see you next week.